Yes, welcome back. We hope you've had a great networking carousel. We hope you had a great break. We hope you had a nice snack. But now you've just seen it in the screen. Becoming a better tester by answering questions online. Niels van Rijmersdal. It's great to see you here. It's great to meet you in person.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've actually, I just told Menno and I already know each other, but we're from different companies. We met in the build community. I'm from Capgemini. I'm new. What do you do?
I work at the Statistics in the Netherlands, and I am in the team that does mobile application development, where we try to innovate the data collection process, where currently we have a lot of studies that we do in book form that people write with pen and paper, and we're trying to transition those to mobile phones.
Okay, great. Yeah, sounds like you have a lot of experience and you really know what you're talking about. I want to urge the audience again, make sure you fill in the Q&A. There's a button on your screen, fill in the questions so our moderator can filter them out and show them to us so we can handle them after the presentation itself. Right now, I'm looking forward to see it. I hope everyone else is as well, and I'll see you in 30 minutes.
Thank you, Jan.
Enjoy.
So, first, a little bit about myself. I already told that I work at the Statistics in the Netherlands. In my free time, I also like to work in the startup community. So a couple of years ago, I started doing that, coaching and working with small startups. And in 2019, I co-founded Stratopo, which is a geotechnology company, and we try to revolutionize solving society's spatial planning problems. I love to work with software engineers and in an agile context where we have short iterations. I think technical excellence is very important, and building less software, keeping it simple. And that cost me the last 12 years to train software engineers in more testing practices and write a lot of automated tests myself. Maybe when you saw the title of my topic, you wondered why would somebody want to answer a lot of questions online. And to be able, before we go into how you ask and answer questions and go over examples, I want to give you a little bit of background why and what was the actual trigger to start answering questions online. And then we have to go back a couple of years. I used to work in what I would call low-risk software environments. So we are building business software for business people with business goals. And if something goes wrong, either somebody's wasting a lot of time or a little bit of time, maybe we lose a little bit of money, and worst case, you lose a client, which luckily for me never happened. And what we most typically did is we built a little bit of software and then shipped it to our user base every 2 or 3 weeks, and we failed fast. We got back feedback about functionality that we either built wrong or it had obvious defects, and then we would fix those defects and ship it again. And then I was working in a team, and my CTO asked me, can your team, whenever we get a defect, add an automated test to make sure that this brittle part of the application stays working. And so that's what we did. We shipped fast, we failed fast, we added test automation, and life was good. We were shipping software continuously and the business was growing. And then I decided to move from Amsterdam to the most southern part of the Netherlands, to the countryside, and I switched jobs. And then I entered this high-risk software environment where we made project management software for factory turnarounds. This is the picture you see here is an oil refinery near Rotterdam, and by law, mandatory, the factory has to shut down for large maintenance. And that means that they, in a time period of a month, take the whole factory down and do all kinds of maintenance work. And as you can imagine, there's all kinds of pipes in this factory, and that contains hazardous products, oil, gases, acids, and all kinds of things that if you, as a person, would get into contact with, could be very hazardous. So we made software to safeguard that, so that the big valve would be closed before somebody would work on a piece of machinery that's attached to a pipe or some dangerous flow. And to add a little bit more to the complexity of that situation, is that these factories, at least at the time, were no Wi-Fi, no cellular phone installation. So somebody would go in there with a scanning machine, would scan a label, would say it's closed, go back to the cabin, then sync it with the computer system, and then somebody else would get a signal on their device. You need to go check that it's actually closed, verify it, go back again, and then somebody would go working on it. And in the first couple of weeks that I was working at this new company, I was watching the 8 o'clock news, and I saw this factory in flames, bursts of flames. It was meters high. And the first thing I thought, oh no, I don't hope this was caused by our software. Or, I mean, I hope nobody died. Luckily, what happened was there was a very large oil canister which dropped from great height and exploded when it hit the ground. And it destroyed some cranes and other places, and luckily everybody was on a short break, so nobody died in this case. But this was like a wake-up call. Niels, you came from this ad hoc environment where we could ship fast, and fail. It was not a problem. But now you go into a situation where we ship software once, it's used through the whole maintenance cycle, and people can die. I mean, my previous testing experience just was not good enough. I thought I'd need to grow and learn how to work in this more waterfall high-risk situations. So it was time to study. So what do typically most people do? They either take a book and read it. So I tried that. I read a couple of books. They were mostly theoretical. I actually started thinking about, did the people that wrote this book actually worked in software environments, or are they just academics? So I started looking onto courses around software testing. And although they seem to be highly valued by employers, if you look at the reviews and how the actual testing community is talking about it, it didn't look and go so well for them. So I skipped those as well. I'm more a practical kind of person, so what I did was see if I could find a way that I could practically learn these skills. So how did I go from manual functional testing noob to a self-proclaimed expert? I set myself a challenge. I set my challenge, and the challenge was, I'm going to I'm going to answer a question about testing online every day for at least a couple of months. Nowadays, they would call it a 100-day challenge or something like that. And I wanted to force myself to think about testing every day, not just about my own domain, but about testing heuristics and testing styles and testing methods. And what I started thinking about where can I find questions to answer. As I had some programming background, I knew Stack Overflow, so I started looking at Stack Overflow. Just for the people who don't know Stack Overflow, it's a questions and answer website where people can ask programming questions. I have this problem, can you deliver me some code? And then some people would answer it and give code examples. And there were also testing questions, but most of them were very technical. I already had some technical testing experience. I was more looking into this manual testing and testing heuristics, testing methods. And with a little bit more research, I saw that there was also, behind Stack Overflow, a network of, I think, around 180 different topics and areas called Stack Exchange, the Stack Exchange network. And there was one called Software Quality Assurance and Testing. And the top question, I'm not sure if you guys can read it from home, but it says, I have 1.5 million lines of code and 0 tests. Where do I start? This was actually the situation I was in. I had, I think, 2 million lines of code. We had 2 testers, me and another guy, and we had 0 tests. We had some test protocols, but not actual regression tests or anything that was reproducible in any way. So this was a nice start, and I started reading more questions here, and I thought this is the place where I'm going to find my question every day. So now I want to take you through some example questions that I've answered over the years. Let's start with one. So this was one of the first. This is a person who sketches a context where he has a matrix of different combinations and is using that as a testing heuristic to create test cases or to cover his application functionality. But the actual question is here in yellow. It's more a terminology question. He wants to know how do you call this type of testing. So two things here. One, this was interesting for me because we also had all kinds of combinations. So this was a really good thing to start thinking about. How can I make repeatable matrices of grids where I can use this to safeguard parts of our application? So I started researching it. And I came to the name the combinatorial test matrix. That's what it's called. And while researching it, I came into another heuristic called Pairwise Testing. Because if you have a lot of combinations, and in our software you could have the combinations of the different valves, but also different roles and different flows, multiple pipes coming together. There's a lot of combinations, possibilities, and the users could create those combinations themselves. So technically, we could create an infinite number of test cases that we needed to create. And we don't have infinite time to test everything. So how do we bring that back to the most important risks to cover? And this pairwise testing is a technique where you try at least to combine one of each combinations together so that you cover most of the execution paths in the application. And while researching this, I also found a list of software tools that can help you creating these combination matrices. And I started actually using one of these tools. I started playing with them, seeing if that would be applicable for our situation at hand. So answering questions is about research, giving facts. Here is a copy of the Wikipedia text. This is something like a definition. Provide links so that somebody who reads this in the future, it's useful and he can use this as a starting point for his own research. And it lets you practice with things that you haven't experienced yet. And if you look at the top right, I'm mirrored. somewhere here, there is an arrow up and a 5 and an arrow down. And if a peer, somebody else from the testing community, clicks the up arrow, that's an upvote, and then I get 1 point. So in this case, 5 of my peers thought this was a good answer. And that feels good. So you get like this positive feedback that what you've researched, what you've communicated is good. And if it's a crappy answer and it's not understandable, trust me, they will downvote you so that the better answers will flow up to the top. And then there is this green check mark, which also means that the original asker also really liked the answer, and he thought my answer was one of the best in this case. Another one, the impossible questions. So this is a question where somebody asks, how can you automate with test automation a Captcha? And maybe you don't know what a Captcha is, so we'll handle that first. It's a way to tell computers and humans apart. So this is designed to be not automated, because if it could be automated, that means either the Captcha, the design is not so good, or it cannot tell computers and humans apart. So the answer to this question is actually you don't. But that's not really satisfying. And if you look at the view counter, which is on the top right under the title, this question was viewed nearly 160,000 times. So let's just say that some people visited double. That's at least 100,000 people in this world that have the same problem. They have a piece of software that they're testing and they're automating the flow, and all of a sudden they're stuck because there's a Captcha and they don't know how to solve it. So research. First, we explain that you don't automate a Captcha. Then we give the definition that the whole idea is that it cannot be automated. And then we consider context. Where is this user? Where is this person? Where does he live? And the first area that I thought, he's a tester in a software engineering team. So if you're a tester in a software engineering team, you can ask your team to build in a backdoor. Just remove the Captcha in the test environment, or add an extra button at the bottom that you just can skip it. This is dangerous because now you also have to have a pre-deployment test to make sure that you disable the backdoor when you deploy it to a production environment. So So it's tricky, and I have had a lot of discussions with developers and testers. Should we add code to our application just for testing purposes? Yes, I think the answer is yes. So build in a backdoor. But what if the context of this person is totally different? It's that you have a supplier, which is maybe software as a service. It's on the cloud, and you cannot ask them to build in a backdoor, or there is no testing environment. There are apparently services that you can send all the context and information from your Captcha and send that to an API, and then they send back the answer, and an actual human will predict what you have to type or click or do. Again, just to go over how we tackle these types of questions is we do research, we give facts, we give links for another research, we consider context, and we give options. Because then, or you need to ask this user more background information. Do you have a development team or not? That's also an option. But there's always another perspective. So maybe your team is as handy as this team, where you can build a robot to circumvent at this time certain CAPTCHAs. And this is an ongoing battle between spammers or criminals that want to break CAPTCHAs and misuse online platforms and the builders of the CAPTCHAs. But good questions have room to have answers from multiple perspectives. And that's very interesting, because you could take any question that is on one of these platforms and learn from others by reading them, and then thinking about, is there another perspective that I could add to this question that could be relevant? And that should not be a personal opinion, but something you could research. And for example, experience levels is a case here. I would like to set an example, like if it's a programming question, I see a lot of answers are just answering the actual programming problem and making the shortest code version as possible, the most unreadable, understandable version that you can build, because it looks cool, it's fast, low CPU usage, and that's then used in your application. And after half a year, you have no idea how it works. And I like to create like a very long descriptive code version, which is slow, but if you look at it half a year later, then maybe you understand what it meant. And that's what I mean with experience levels, because also people reading these answers from different experience levels might find that valuable. So some might want to have the CPU optimized version, some might want to have the more understandable, readable version. And then last but not least, culture. I really like that perspective, because in some places in the world, there's a whole different meaning to normal. And for example, my boss told me questions. So my boss told me to create this report of this testing thing, or I have to do this, but I disagree, or can you please give me fuel to start an argument with him? And then some people respond, don't argue, he's your boss, just listen. And that's sort of, for me, for a Dutch person, that's total lucracy, because we have these flat hierarchies, we like to talk a lot, and then take decisions as a collective. So I like to bring that as a perspective that this hierarchy thinking mindset is not everywhere. It depends on the culture of your company, depends on your surroundings. So that's another perspective that you could bring in answering these questions. Let's do another one. Oh no, and let's not read the question, but just the yellow part. Also, please tell me how to start writing codes. Okay. So this is a person who's new with test automation. He installed some tools and he's struggling, and he's just giving us this open question about, please help me. And this is like, I'm not sure if you ever had a help desk, did a help desk job by phone. It's very hard if you're not behind the computer or not have the system at hand to actually help somebody like this. But one thing that triggered me is that he is copying files, jar files everywhere. I had a little bit of experience with Java, so I think this is not a good idea. You need a dependency manager. So I started researching it. I never used NetBeans, so I downloaded and installed NetBeans. I had a little bit of knowledge about Maven, so I did some stuff with Maven. And I made a step-by-step tutorial for this guy to follow. And I put the code on GitHub. And it took some time to actually reproduce this person's situation and build an example. And the fun thing is, the code here what it does, it opens Firefox. It goes to the Stack Exchange question page, and it goes to my answer and clicks the check mark of this answer. So I posted this answer, went to bed, in the hope that in the morning I would wake up and the check mark was green. It was green. So either this person liked what I wrote, or he executed the code, and that marked it okay. And I knew that he was fine. So this is a real nice chance to learn new tools. You just take some challenge, take some question, try to reproduce the situation, and see if you can solve it. One last example. Terminology. This is a simple question. What's the difference between a major and a minor bug? Probably you could find this answer in the dictionary. But thinking again about context, the context that this team might have is that two people in the team are discussing this terminology question and disagree, or need a definition to be able to continue their work. I do think terminology is a lot about opinions, and I always start off with explaining that terminology is something you should ask in your team or in your company what that means for you, because there are so many terms: regression testing, integration testing, smoke testing, post-deployment testing, unit testing, programmer tests. There's a lot of words that use the word test, and actually most people don't actually know what they mean. And if you switch from company to company or from team to team, they mean a total different thing. So you need to communicate about that. And then for classifying bugs, major or minor, I don't personally like the classification. So I would rather have bugs that are critical that we need to solve now, and bugs that we need to solve next. And all the others are probably features or trivial or something we don't need to fix. And then you can use this zero bug classification system, for example. These answers it depends. It depends on your context, and I don't know your context, so I cannot give a factual answer. But this does give me the opportunity to spread concepts or ideas that I learned somewhere else. So now I'm taking ideas from another location or from maybe another question and sharing it on. And this also results for myself in a form of personal documentation, where I don't store this image or I don't store the article, which I find interesting. No, I create an answer somewhere around it, and then I reference it to people, or I know where to find it by using the search engine of this website, or even Google, because these answers are really easily found in Google. And then it feels sort of as microblogging. So you have a worldwide impact, and my answering 1,000 questions reached about 3.4 million people in 9 years, which I find, if I calculate that back to a monthly view count, that's like 30,000 views per month. That's 1,000 a day. I had a blog once with some articles. I mean, I was happy if I had 100 views. So this is pretty good. And now I've talked a little bit about why I started answering and asking questions online. And now I'm curious if you guys are using systems like this. So I have a short poll, and then I will use those answers in a later. I hope this question would be multi-select, but maybe pick the one that's most applicable to you. I see there are already 5 votes. Maybe the people that haven't voted yet can still. Okay, so I want to talk shortly about some benefits, and then I'll go back to these statistics that you're now filling in the poll. What I noticed while answering questions is I saw trends happening over the years. So I saw new frameworks coming and going, and what I like about that is that you know that these frameworks are actually used, whereas you can see somebody being very excited like me talking about new technology, but that doesn't mean people are using it and it works for them. And now you also see where people are struggling, and so that's interesting. You also see new testing heuristics, like mutation testing became very popular a while back. But one of the things, and we also talked during lunch here at the set, that a lot of people are struggling or are these hybrids between they're a manual tester becoming a test automator, or test automators that like programming that are brought back to manual testing tasks because there's not enough time to automate. And I see that a lot of people are struggling with that. And people asking, is it important to learn automating or things like that? And then I noticed that most of the people start test automation with Selenium, and then with page objects, and then they read blogs and they use the most complex forms to start. And this is sometimes frustrating, because I think people should start with more simple things. And so when I try to answer their questions and point them to blogs of Martin Fowler, which has like really nice conceptual explanations of page objects, for example. But you can start spotting trends, and there are a lot more trends that you can spot when you start questions. And then I think it's important to just talk about what are garbage questions, because some questions are really bad, and you have to be patient and give feedback. And that's similar with your users that do defect reports, because I've got a lot of defect reports that are like, I clicked some button and then I got an error and help me. And not like, what did you do before? Which operating system are you using? What did you expect that would happen? And that's the same with asking questions. You want to do your own research and explain what you tried, or else we're going to just ask over and over again, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? We're not answering questions online. It's not like being your personal help desk. No, it's about guiding you and creating knowledge that a lot of users after you can also use. So include enough information, screenshots, be specific, make your answers smaller so that they can be answer factual instead of very broad. So why did I keep answering these questions? I mean, I could have stopped after 3 months. I learned a lot. Maybe I learned enough. But these platforms have this gamification in there. You get points. And so every morning when I got in the office, I would open this website and hope that there was like this green, these new points have arisen. And then with these points, I got more privileges. And privileges are upvoting, but also editing questions, editing answers, removing spam, and work together with your community. There is also a back office where community members can communicate and decide how to which questions to delete or to edit or to ask more information. You can get badges, and then there are weekly leaderboards. And after a while, I wanted to be the #1 on the yearly leaderboard, and I was #1 for 2-3 years in a row. And then I wanted to be the #1 of everybody. So I kept doing that. And then after, I think, 8.5 years, I surpassed everybody else. And some started 2 years earlier than me. So that was nice and was real fun. But Niels, is it only fun? No, it's not only fun. So there are sleepless nights because people are stupid, me included. We disagree, and sometimes we get emotional, and that can be frustrating. And I think my wife is watching as well currently, and she knows this happens. I'm typing on the keyboard, really excited, and she knows to go to bed because somebody on the internet is wrong, and Niels has to correct that. And what's even worse is downvotes without comments. So people just say, I don't like your answer, and not explaining why. So I cannot improve it. It's just like, oh. And at a while, it was so much time I spent on it that I really had to create discipline to not go to the website and answer any of the new questions because other things were more important. But was it worth it? Yes, it was worth it. I think teaching and explaining something in a language to others that they can understand really deeply ingrains this information in your brain and really makes it more applicable in your day job or anywhere else. My research skills make me confident. And maybe the last point here is it builds a portfolio. So that I could show that I understand testing and share it with other people, and they can see that. And then don't be scared. So I got the statistics here. Maybe we can show the poll. So 23% never use the platform like this. Most of you use answers on platforms like this, which is obvious. You Google something and you will land on a platform like this. But only 8% asked the questions, and only a relatively large part has answered questions. But I understand that it's scary to ask questions online, because you get, just like with a talk, we're nervous. You think you're going to make a fool out of yourself, and it's going to be on the internet forever. And people to read it, but I think you can overcome that. And can we get the slide back? I think the last part is that you have so much knowledge in you that you can share, and it's a shame that you only share it with your team or with your company, or maybe on communities like this where there's so much broader world out there. So grow a pair and help your peers and learn by doing. And thank you for your time. I think we'll go to questions. I think we have another 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, we should have around 10 more minutes for questions. So first of all, it was great to see you. As in, we've done this before, like in the kind of like the baby shoes, translated literally from Dutch.
The trial run.
Yeah, the trial run, and it was fun to see how you build this. You're really great at building things up, as in the questions going from nowhere to knowledge to being number one, and also going from, I kind of have this idea, I want to give this presentation, and then you fully commit to it, and look what's come out of it. I really enjoyed it, even watching it 3 times. It's just great fun.
Thank you.
And I already see that there's a couple of questions coming in. One of them is, how do you find tests? Oh, it keeps changing. Sorry. How do you find test-specific questions on Stack Overflow?
So Stack Overflow has a tagging system, so you can filter on tags or on keywords. So like Selenium, if you want to have more technical kind of questions. And you can also go to the Stack Exchange network, and then there is the software quality and testing, and then there are only questions about testing. And then again, you can filter on manual testing or test management, test tooling, test automation. And I always also like to answer questions that have already been answered. So you can filter on which has been the most popular question this month, so most page views, and most answers, because this is sort of something that the community is working on. So then you can try to answer one of those questions.
So what did you do then? As in, if you go to questions that have been viewed a lot, there's a chance it's been answered already.
Yeah.
What would you do then?
Add a new perspective.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're wrong.
Oh, that's what you mentioned in the last
Yeah,
part. Like,
so
someone on the internet's wrong, so I'll just try and fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
Going back a bit further, someone asks, how did you go from the shift from low risk to high risk, and how did you deal with the responsibility change? Because you talked about, what if my part fails and the entire refinery blows up and it's part of my test?
Of course, this is shared. I was not sole responsible. QA is not the sole responsible of the quality of the software. I think mostly we just give signals that the quality is not good enough. So in our case, before we shipped to our client, they also do their own testing. But I would find like 600 defects, and the clients would find another 200. That's not good. And then there's the signal. We need to change our processes and work more on that and find the most risk. So we started identifying which are the most riskful parts of the application to make sure that at least those worked very fine. And then that all the other, just the business stuff can break once in a while. Although one of our clients actually only wanted one version. They would test themselves, get one more version, and then stick to that for a year. So they would have workarounds on the screen. Don't click that button, for example.
Okay.
Scary.
Another question is, what was the most concerning test questions you've come across? I don't know what the definition of concerning is by the person who asked the question, but maybe you can give your own view on it.
Most concerning, I don't know. There are so many questions that I've answered, so concerning.
Or maybe another question.
No. I think I have one. Yeah. So not really concerning, but people showing concern. So somebody asked, "Is it okay if I make a hiring decision because I'm just a junior testing, and I answered like, you're hiring a new friend, so it's fine if you hire a senior and that you can learn from,
Yeah.
and verify that this is probably somebody you can learn from. So be open to that challenge and don't be scared.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a really great view. Also, yeah, it's mentioned that you answer all the questions and you didn't know the answers yet, but you did your own research, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. But how were you able to find answers to questions people posted on Stack Exchange?
But they didn't do the research.
So, can
so-
you maybe explain in short how you did the research in order to find the answers they couldn't find?
Yeah, so you start with Google with some keywords and read some blogs and start thinking about it, and I sometimes sleep about it, and then do some more Googling and some research, and then. But there is so much out there. You just have to understand the right keywords and how to do sort of fast reading.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you become a fast reader. Like probably this page doesn't have the answer. Next one. So that's really helpful, and there is a lot of information out there,
Yeah.
but people are just not finding it, or they're lazy. They're I'll just ask it at Stack Exchange,
Yeah, okay.
and somebody will answer it, which is nice because now it becomes documented and very good Googleable. Yeah.
Well, that's very useful as well. I already use it in my work on a daily basis that people ask me questions on testing that I can find quickly on the internet if I don't know. And that's also using Google. So that's great to use in everyday life. To another question is, hello Niels, in the meantime, thank you for the insights you've given us. Well, that's not a question, but it's great that it's there, I guess. Thank you very much for that. Also, how did you overcome the fear of asking and answering questions?
Okay, yeah.
If you had any.
Yeah, so overcoming the fear of answering questions. I still have. You're going to post something that a lot of people are going to view for a long time, and they're going to respond on it with comments. Sometimes we have discussions. Not always fun. But you just type something, and then you do this, and then you click send. That's the only way to overcome it. That's with hard
your
emails.
Pair,
Yeah, but it's with anything that you just have to. It's good enough. You have to get it out there, and just take the feedback.
Yeah.
That's and that sometimes feels scary, and it will keep feeling scary over time.
That's also a good insight. And yeah, well, too bad Son is not here to tell us more about good is good enough. Wow. Alexandru really posted a long question. Maybe we can read it together. We talked a lot about the questions, but what do you think is correct to do when you have a lot of answers, but in the same time, you don't want to communicate it incorrectly? And most important, you don't want to give wrong information in a particular case. So I think Alexandru means that when there's multiple answers, you don't want to give the wrong answer.
Yeah, or steer somebody in a direction that might
Not
be
right for them.
that might be bad for them personally. I think you don't want to lie, you don't want to make up stuff. So, and that's also Stack Exchange tries to force us to be factual, give factual answers. So you sort of have to reference something or include something that actually shows that this is true. Or maybe just don't answer the question, or clearly mark, it depends, do your own research.
Yeah.
And I do add that because of a lot of testing is mostly risk analysis, minimizing certain risks. And that's always context dependent. So there's no one size fits all answer for how to make sure we have no defects in our products. That depends.
Yeah, exactly. Well, then another question is, what does your research process look like and where do you start? You already mentioned Google and looking it up yourself.
Yeah.
Is there anything more in depth you can add to it, maybe?
You have to make the decision. Am I actually going to spend time on this and reproduce it locally? So
How did you do that?
And do we take the tools? So I decided to spend like at least 1 hour per day, and then
That's a lot.
So but answering a question, even a simple question, takes 15 minutes.
Okay.
And that's if you know the answer.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't know the answer, you need at least a couple of minutes of research, probably longer, and then reproducing it takes another, depending on how complex it is. So
Do you know what question took you the longest to answer?
I think the example
take?
where I created all the code and publishing it on GitHub, that's the most time consuming.
How much time do you think
I
that
think
took?
3 hours.
3 hours in total for one question.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you still answer questions, and what type of questions do you?
I'm a little bit more focused now on product management roles, and I think that's still about testing, because product management is also about quality, functional quality. What does this product deliver the value that you need?
Do you mean in your career or on
in
Stack Exchange?
in my career, and that also means on Stack Exchange I try to more focus on agile product management questions nowadays, and there is a Stack Exchange for product management, so I try to answer questions there. And for the testing questions, I try to focus on team process and agile things, because I find those the most interesting. And I stopped answering Selenium questions or technical questions, because
There's so
nowadays
many.
there are enough people that can answer that, and I've answered my share. So
That's what I also thought about the poll, because many people mentioned that they have read answers, but they haven't asked questions. But yeah, in case there, as you mentioned, as for Selenium WebDriver, if many answers have already been given for a lot of cases, you read the answers, because you don't have to ask the questions since you're already late.
Yeah.
Like the pioneers who try and work out something new, they may ask questions because they've never found it.
Yeah.
But for the other ones, it might be more.
It does happen that the questions get answered over and over again, and then the moderators deduplicate that. And sometimes that works, and sometimes doesn't, because sometimes it's just a little bit different enough. And it's also fun for the community to get some easy answers and
I've seen
get
it
some
as
points.
well. That people on communities like Stack Exchange answer like, follow this link because this question's already been asked in a like semi-passive aggressive way. But
yeah, okay. So Stack Overflow is much more passive aggressive than most of the other things in the network. So I think the testing community is a much more safe space than the programming community.
okay. There's another question that says, do you still look on Stack Overflow at your points?
Yeah, once in a while.
Once in a while?
Yeah.
As in, how recent was the data you've shown us just now?
So I saved up the 120 points for you guys. So I had to hold myself back of not clicking and seeing what questions generate what points. And when I get points, I try to reread the question and the answer, because somebody found it valuable in a later stage in time. And then I want to make sure that the answer is actually still up to date, because times do change, and then sometimes I add an update. So I think every week I do look at Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange to see how my answers how they're doing.
Okay, we have time for maybe one more question. I think asking, have you ever changed an answer you've given online? So something you just mentioned that something may change.
Yeah.
Have you ever changed something over time because the old answer may have been outdated?
Yes. That's a short answer. But most of the time I add an update. So this new knowledge created, or for example, Cypress, a testing tool, there was the decision, is it open source or not? They said they would open source it. But I personally don't want to use tools that are not open source. So I would not recommend it at that time, because it was unsure. And then when they open sourced it, I removed that part. Because it's good. And for example, the Scrum guide changes, and then
you have to
update some stuff here and there.
Okay, well, great to know. It's great having you here. I think our time is almost up, so close that we don't have time for another question, because I need to head back to the other studio. And for now, I'd really like to thank you. And for everyone who's watching, please join us in the other studio for the closing and the network carousel. And thank you so much for being here.